Hungary had spent nearly 3 decades trying to put a climber on Everest without oxygen. 16 expeditions. None of them succeeded. Some came close. Laszlo Varkony died in 2010, just 80 meters from the summit. Zsolt Erusz, the country's most accomplished high-altitude climber, died 3 years later on Kanchenjunga. Szilárd Suhajda believed he could change that. On the night of May 24, 2023, his GPS tracker placed him at 8,795 meters, just 53 meters below the summit. He was still moving upward. Then the signal stopped. It never came back. 3 elite Sherpas searched the route between the Hillary Steppe and the summit. They found nothing. No tracks, no equipment, no body. This is one of the most crowded sections of Everest. In peak season, climbers line up there for hours. So how does someone disappear from a place like that? Subscribe to Summit X for forensic breakdowns of the technical failures and human decisions behind the world's most high-stakes mountain disasters. To understand what happened at 8,795 meters, you have to start with the man who got there. He started climbing as a child, going into the hills with his grandfather. He grew up reading about Reinhold Messner, the Austrian alpinist Emil Zsigmondy, and the Hungarian climber István Benedek. The mountains weren't a hobby. They were the direction his life was pointing from the beginning. In 2007, he climbed Mont Blanc. That appears to have been the moment everything locked into place. From that point forward, the 8,000ers were the goal, and everything else was in service of reaching them. He wasn't wealthy. He taught English. To fund expeditions that cost tens of thousands of pounds, he moved to Britain and worked 7 days a week. His first high-altitude down jacket came second-hand off eBay because new gear was too expensive. Between failed attempts, he went back to England, worked overtime, saved for 2 more years, and returned. The failures came in a sequence that would have ended most people's ambitions. Gasherbrum in 2012, unsuccessful. Back to Britain. K2 in 2015, abandoned at 7,400 meters due to avalanche risk. Back to Britain. K2 again in 2016, unsuccessful. Back to Britain. Everest in 2017, forced down from 7,900 meters with a stomach illness that cost him 15 kilograms. He received public criticism in Hungary for that one. He went back to England and worked. The pattern is worth sitting with. Every failure was followed by a return to teaching, more overtime, more savings, another attempt. The money saved for each expedition represents years of life in a very literal sense. Time spent in a classroom instead of on a mountain, building toward one specific point on one specific peak. In 2019, on his 3rd attempt, he summited K2 without supplemental oxygen. 15 hours from Camp 4 to the top of the 2nd highest mountain on Earth. He became the first Hungarian to do it, and one of a tiny number of people to have done it that way at all. After K2, he was finally able to quit teaching. The mountain had returned something for everything he had spent on it, but Everest remained. And Everest carried a specific national weight. Hungary had mounted 16 Everest expeditions across 27 years without success. Laszlo Varkony had attempted Everest 8 times without oxygen, dying in 2010 on descent after getting within 80 meters of the summit. Zsolt Erusz, the most accomplished Hungarian high-altitude mountaineer, died descending from Kanchenjunga in 2013 after summiting. Szilárd knew this history. He had grown up inside it. His goal was explicit: go where those men had gone, and go further. By May 2023, he had also summited Broad Peak and Lhotse, both without oxygen. Everest was the one remaining. The night before he left base camp, he sat down and wrote in his journal, not about the mountain, but about the cost of staying on it. The entry was released publicly after his disappearance. It reads like this: scared, happy, excited, waiting to get going and waiting for landing, coming home. 2 images sitting side by side in the same sentence. The last meters leading to the summit, his little boy Soma running toward him at the airport. That is not the writing of someone who has pushed doubt out of his mind. It is the writing of someone who knows exactly what he is carrying into the mountain and has decided to go anyway. Both images are present simultaneously. The summit, the airport. He holds them together and walks out of the tent. On May 21st, he left base camp already unwell. A deep cough. Teary eyes. The planned summit date was May 24th. He left anyway. 3 days later, at 7:30 in the morning on May 24th, he was photographed at the balcony at 8,400 meters. He was sitting among discarded oxygen bottles left by other climbers. The visual was stark. A solo climber who had refused supplemental oxygen, resting in the middle of everyone else's abandoned canisters. The contrast was impossible to miss. Ben Ferrer, descending from his own summit attempt, passed him there and took the photograph. Ferrer assumed Szilard was at his turnaround point, that he had pushed as far as he could and was preparing to come down. Szilard stood up and kept climbing. Hours passed. The afternoon moved in. Weather was beginning to shift. Wind was picking up and the light was going. That is when filmmaker and climber Elia Szilárd encountered him, moving slowly but steadily, 20 meters below the south summit. Szilárd was himself climbing without oxygen that day, which means he understood exactly what he was looking at. He tried to speak to Szilard. No reply came back. Szilárd later described what he observed. It was after 4 in the afternoon. Szilard had still not reached the south summit. The weather was turning. It was getting dark. Szilárd recognized the signs and turned back himself. But before he descended, he looked back once more. Szilard was still standing, still going. Szilárd said afterward he was almost certain at that moment the Hungarian climber would not survive. The time, the pace, the weather, the altitude without oxygen. The arithmetic was already running against him in every direction at once. What happened in the 90 minutes or so after that final sighting is the critical gap in the record. Somewhere between the south summit and the Hillary Steppe, in deteriorating conditions, in darkness or near darkness, without supplemental oxygen and without anyone beside him, Szilard covered the remaining distance. His GPS tracker sent its last signal at approximately 8,795 meters. That position sits just below the Hillary Steppe, 53 meters beneath the summit. Whether that signal was captured on the way up or the way down is unknown. The data does not resolve it. Whether he stood on the summit of Everest that night is unknown. No one was there to see it. He was alone. There is no record of what he reached or what he saw. After the GPS went silent, his home team in Hungary had no further contact. Radio communications had already been lost. The silence lasted through the night. But at 8,780 meters, that silence was about to be broken by a discovery that changed everything, from a summit push to a race against biology. The morning of May 25th brought one more piece of information. It was not good news. A Sherpa from a separate expedition, descending from the summit zone, spotted a figure at approximately 8,780 meters, at the base of the Hillary Steppe. The Sherpa knew Szilard personally. There was no question about identification. The man he was looking at was alive. But what he was looking at told him everything about the situation. Szilard was showing visible frostbite. His movements suggested what climbers and medics recognize immediately at that altitude as high altitude cerebral edema. HACE is what happens to the brain when it is starved of oxygen long enough at extreme elevation. The tissue swells, pressure builds inside the skull. The symptoms move in a sequence that is well documented and consistently fatal without intervention. Severe headache first, then loss of coordination, then confusion, then the loss of awareness of where you are or what you are doing. There is no treatment for HACE at 8,780 meters. The only treatment is descent, or oxygen, or both. Szilard had neither. The Sherpa also saw something else. Szilard was not on the main climbing route. He was not connected to the fixed rope. At 8,780 meters with compromised brain function, his navigation had already failed. He had drifted off the path. This detail matters more than almost anything else in the account. To understand why, consider the terrain. The Hillary Steppe area sits on the southeast ridge. On the left side, the ridge drops away toward Nepal. On the right, it falls toward Tibet. Both directions lead to faces that are steep, exposed, and completely unreachable from the fixed ropes. A climber on the main path would not see someone who had moved even 30 meters off route in either direction. A fall from that position would send a body down one of those faces. Neither face has ever been fully searched by any expedition. The Sherpa was not in a position to help. He was guiding a Chinese client who had become incapacitated on descent and could not be left alone or unassisted on that terrain. Abandoning that client at 8,780 meters would have been a death sentence for both of them. More than that, approaching Szilard across open terrain without a fixed rope connecting them would have put the Sherpa in immediate danger. Without a safety line, one stumble on that ground kills the rescuer as well. The decision not to stop was not a failure of compassion. It was a recognition of what the arithmetic permitted. The Sherpa continued down and reported what he had seen the moment he reached an altitude where communication was possible. The response from the home team in Hungary was immediate. Simone Moro, the Italian helicopter pilot and elite alpinist, flew 3 Sherpas directly from Kathmandu to Camp 2 at 6,400 meters. Among them was Gelja Sherpa, who earlier that same year had completed the first ever winter ascent of K2. These were not general-purpose guides. They were among the fastest and most capable high-altitude climbers operating anywhere on Earth in 2023. They left Camp 2 at 10 in the morning on May 26th. They reached Camp 4 at 7,950 meters in 7 hours. The average climber takes 3 times that long. After a brief rest and once the wind dropped enough to move, they departed Camp 4 at 7:15 in the evening and pushed toward the Hillary Step. They searched the entire section between 8,750 meters and the summit. They climbed it multiple times. They checked every visible fall line on both the Nepali and Tibetan sides, going as far down each as the fixed ropes would allow. They searched through the night. They found nothing. No tracks, no equipment, no body. The mountain had already taken him somewhere the ropes could not follow. The search team had covered every inch of the fixed ropes. But their failure to find him revealed a terrifying truth about the Hillary Step. It is possible to be surrounded by hundreds of people and still be completely unreachable. That question, how a man vanishes from the most trafficked corridor on the highest mountain on Earth, is the one that defines this story. How does a person vanish from a section of mountain that hundreds of climbers pass through every May? The Hillary Step area is not remote. During summit season on the South Col route, it is a corridor. In 2023, Everest saw record numbers of permits and successful summits. The section between 8,750 meters and the top is roughly 100 meters of terrain that every team on the standard Nepal route must transit. A body on the fixed rope or anywhere close to the main path would be found. Every subsequent team that passed through after the search would have reported it. None did. The answer sits in that single detail from the Sherpa's sighting. Szilard was not on the main route. He was not connected to the fixed rope. He was some distance from the standard path, in terrain where a subsequent team on the fixed line would not see him. HACE had already taken his navigation by the morning of May 25th. He had drifted, and the mountain had absorbed him into terrain no rope would reach. Adjacent to the main path at the Hillary Step, the mountain does not offer flat ground or gentle slopes. It offers the Kangshung face dropping toward Tibet on one side and the southwest face falling toward Nepal on the other. Both are extreme terrain. Both lead to ground that no rope-assisted search can reach. A fall from a position 30 or 40 meters off the main route in either direction sends a body down a face that subsequent seasons will not cross, that no fixed line will ever reach, and that the mountain will keep indefinitely. 3 possible reconstructions exist. He summited and was overtaken by HACE and exhaustion on descent, drifting off route before he could get back to the fixed line. He fell from unprotected terrain at 8,780 meters, while the HACE was already controlling his movements, sending him down one of those faces. Or snow covered him in the 36 hours between when the Sherpa saw him and when the search team arrived. The rescue Sherpas searched every fall line the ropes would allow them to reach. Whatever was beyond that perimeter, they could not check. There is one more number worth stating clearly. Laszlo Varkony held the record for the closest any Hungarian had come to the Everest summit without oxygen. On his final attempt in 2010, he reached within 80 meters of the top before dying on the descent. Szilard's last confirmed position was 53 meters below the summit, 30 meters closer than any Hungarian before him. He beat the record he had spent years chasing. It cost him everything. His wife made one public statement after the search was called off. The family's wish was to leave him on the mountain if he was ever found. She did not elaborate. His father, Tibor, posting publicly while the rescue was still underway, wrote that he was praying his grandson Soma could slap his father's palm again and say, "Hello, Daddy is back home." Soma did not get that moment. Hungary's 27-year attempt to put a climber on Everest without oxygen ended the same way 16 attempts before it had ended. Not at the summit. Somewhere between the summit and a fixed rope, somewhere the search teams could not reach. But what happened to Szilárd was not bad luck. It was biology running its predicted course. Every hour he spent above 8,000 meters without supplemental oxygen, his brain was losing the capacity to keep him alive. The HACE. The Sherpa observed on the morning of May 25th was not a sudden development. It was the cumulative result of days at extreme altitude with no oxygen buffer. His navigation failed, his route judgment failed. The systems that would have kept him on the fixed line and brought him back down failed one by one in the exact sequence that high-altitude physiology predicts they will. He beat Laszlo Varkony's record by 30 meters. He died 30 meters closer to the summit than any Hungarian before him. The record cost him everything. It had always cost everyone who chased it. His wife asked that he be left on the mountain if found. His son Soma did not get his father back. The arithmetic above 8,000 meters without oxygen does not change for anyone. If you want to understand exactly why the human body begins to fail the moment supplemental oxygen disappears at extreme altitude, watch this next. Subscribe so you don't miss it.